You want to kind of
Yeah,
walk us
I
through it?
can give you, yeah, I can just give you the like highlights from this. So basically,
Absolutely.
yeah. So the basically, as I was saying initially, this is a small family clinic setup. Compromises like of basically you have two physicians with one MA, which is basically taking
Hmm.
notes and stuff, and the other person is the front desk person. So if you look at the roles, this is heavily reliant on the physician itself, because the other two roles do not actually
Hmm.
do any kind of administrative work because they are not trained to do that. So they will do a little bit of stuff, but most of the coding itself, like reminders, arguing with the insurance in the sense like, hey, why are the denials happening? And that's basically done by a physician in terms of making reports and that kind of stuff. So the whole highlight of this, basically, what I was able to I guess investigate a little bit was like a lot of physician time was actually going into these administrative tasks,
Right.
which are basically very like if you look at it, like they're very basic AI tasks which could be done other than
Mhm.
HIPAA information. Anything regarding those efforts can be automated, like as you see on the screen. If you're looking at the scheduling, checking,
Mhm.
reminders, claims and coding, these
Right.
are easily something which can be scheduled and
Of
automated
course.
for the customer. So looking at it from that perspective, it just made more sense for me to highlight, okay, like this is something which is not actually started yet. It is going to happen soon in next 3 month window. So obviously we cannot go full on automation right away.
Of
So
course.
I give like a 18-month buffer period here. If you scroll down, you will see basically what I'm talking about here is like instead of as I mentioned, like not fully automated, more of a like a balanced AI, measured AI model. Yes.
Right. This kind of middle
Yeah,
section that you wrote
exactly.
here, right?
Yeah, yeah. So how do we make that like if physician wants to see 20 patients instead of a 16 patient,
Hmm.
giving them that leeway with it, like instead of spending time after working hours or during work hours to actually spend on notes and that kind of stuff. So
Well,
yeah,
and that's where not to interrupt here, but I
yeah,
saw up here you mentioned,
yeah, yeah. This
see,
is
where was
exactly.
it? Higher cost work sits outside the visit, which is where
Yeah,
you would want your
yeah,
doctor, right? And I think
exactly.
I mean, I think this is exactly, this just shows the power of this, right?
Yeah.
Which is to say, oh, this is my bottleneck, right?
Mhm.
And they're doing stuff that they shouldn't necessarily do. And so let's inverse Conway it, right?
Yep. Yep.
Which is exactly what you did here. And you say, okay, non-clinical communication is not the most efficient use, right, of
Exactly.
our clinicians'
Yep.
time. But if we don't do something about it, they
Yeah.
remain the bottleneck. But if we
Exactly.
do too much,
Yeah.
then might have a really bad outcome.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
that's powerful.
yeah, and that was the thing too. Like there would be a line in there which basically was something which when I was talking to one of the physician and they mentioned was like, hey, it should be how AI proposes, a physician endorses. So basically, you AI propose the report or whatever it is, and it's the final review because obviously there are HIPAA compliance issues. You cannot just have AI generated reports sent to a customer regarding their labs and stuff,
Of course.
especially if they're not normal.
Yeah.
So those guardrails baked into the system where it is getting approvals from the like even if it's just a like a skill of a cloud or something which is going through that and then it's sending it to the
Right.
physician which is basically signing off on it. So it's just one of those things like I felt like it would be super helpful in a AI driven clinic structure.
Well, and I think something you mentioned is very relevant to what we are talking about with our schema, right? So if we go
Yeah,
back to
yeah.
this and we say, hey, what schema do you need for your
Yep.
practitioner practice, right?
Yep.
One of those items that you just talked about, right, which is effectively, um, remind me, was it this was a useful, like, there's that Boolean piece, like
Yeah.
you proposed this to me
Yeah.
model, and
Yeah,
I
exactly.
accepted it, right?
Yep. Yep.
Now think about that. If you're actually logging the tokens in and
Hmm.
you're logging not just tokens, but then you're logging the output, then you can do semantic
Oh yeah, yeah,
comparison to
yeah,
say, 50% of the time the doctor rejected that
yep.
particular model's
Mhm.
suggestion, but when they used this other model, it was 80% effective. Like
Yep,
that's
exactly.
unbelievably powerful.
100%, 100%, especially for a small setup like that where you do not have the resources you need to actually take care of these different services and the
Absolutely.
agentic system doing it for you, that's a game changer right there.
Yeah, no, I think you're nailing this already. Tell me how you want to continue to go through it.
Yeah, so basically, and this part is actually checking in on like the system which they are using, which is basically EHRs, or some
Hmm.
place they call them EMRs, which is like, hey, person for the patient records goes in there. It's very HIPAA compliant oriented. They have their own AI in there. So how my system is going to be talking to that? What's the interaction happening? If there are any API interconnections which needs to happen, like if when you were talking about the contract, right, I was thinking about it from that perspective, like what
Right,
contract needs to be set up. And again, it's kind of a pro and con of this. Like template D is like, it gives me an opportunity to do it from the scratch, right? So I'm in a better
right.
position rather than like, okay, if somebody has already done it
Well,
now.
but it also means you have too
Yeah,
many options, right?
exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
like a lot of choices are not always the easiest thing to tackle.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I did part of my undergraduate thesis work was on, how do you filter too much information? Like,
Yeah,
how do you pick the right toothbrush when you're looking at
e-
all those
exactly.
toothbrushes? You're like, how can I possibly filter this? But yeah, no, you're exactly right. Yeah, you're exactly
Yeah.
right.
Especially that all that information is at your fingertips, literally. Like you can get
Right.
anything you want as part of the information if you're doing comparisons, whatever. Yeah, and yeah, if those that was the highlight of like how the tools which exist in that domain work with
Right.
AI native capabilities. And yeah, and basically this is the section 4, I think so. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
this is talking about like, hey, how where we would be without like if we don't use AI native, what that would look like in the
Mhm.
future if we utilize a hybrid effort, which I recommend here in this case, to start with at least, and see like how it takes, and like then what the self like I was doing a little bit of researching on my own, and like
Yeah.
what the completely autonomous would look like for this, like full
Right.
autonomic system. Obviously, that requires some of the licensing issues you will have to deal with, but once the business is stable, you can actually focus on that kind of stuff to invest back into the business. Um,
I
and yeah,
also like you put governing contract in here, because that's what we've been talking about today, right? These contracts
yeah,
affect these API contracts. And I think this is exactly the right way to think about that.
yeah, and yeah, and as far as the reconciliation note is like, hey, going back to the actual problem, like it's not always like, hey, like increasing customers or increasing patient would help the clinic. It's not that, because you will if you keep going the same way we are going right now, it would be the
Hmm.
same thing. Like you have more workload after that, and like
Right.
your physician, your staff is not leaving till late. It's just the productivity all the way is not increasing by just having more patients. So how we can actually address the problem, which is the physician's time. How do we
Right.
solve that issue? And I think if you look at the bottom, it's like
Mhm.
even my instrument is actually talking about that.
Oh yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, there we go. If we can only instrument one thing, it's insurance and imaging denials. And I think this is exactly, again, I'm going to pull back up the slides here because when we talk about what do we instrument, right? We say,
Yeah.
what do we instrument first?
Hmm.
The fact that you have an answer
Yeah.
immediately here, right?
Yep.
Insurance and imaging denials is precisely what the goal was out of last
Mhm.
week. So that when we
Yep.
have this conversation today, you say, "Oh, got it.
Yep.
That's how I build my schema."
Yeah, exactly. So, like as you were talking about, I was like, this is literally how you have. Obviously, the AI native is already making the business efficient, but how do you, I guess, it's make your AI efficient, and that's where the
Right.
schema will come into play.
Well, yeah,
In
I
my
mean,
opinion. Yeah.
it's kind of I don't want to say silly.
Yeah.
It's almost too simple to think about it as you're hiring a new employee,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
right? And so you
Yeah.
say, "Well, how would you onboard a
Yeah.
robot?"
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
again, it feels a little silly to talk
yeah,
about, but when you start to think about what are you actually doing here, it's like, oh,
yeah,
I'm telling this system how
yeah,
we operate and how to get the right information from the right places and how to give me the right information such that I can tell that it's the right information and I don't get messed up by just assuming that it's going to be correct. Right? Because I mean, we've all worked in workplaces where you're like, oh, well, Jane or John Doe, they're the expert. And so,
mhm.
but then when Jane or John Doe give you the wrong information, the whole thing collapses, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. This is fantastic. And I'm very excited that you did this. This is exactly what we're looking for. And ultimately it's for you, right? It's
Yeah.
it's it's there to help you. And I think it mapped perfectly
Mm.
with this week's topic. So honestly, like this is a huge win
Yeah,
for both of
yeah.
you.
No, as I was saying, like this has been super helpful for me. At least with the case I'm coming with for this
Absolutely.
class, this ties in perfectly.